Hey, Cavs fans, German, Spencer Davies with you here on the Cavs Insider postgame report after a disappointing 113-98 loss for the Cavaliers up in Boston in Game 5 of the series, which means obviously the series is officially over. Boston moving on to the Eastern Conference Finals. Cavaliers will be coming home and licking their wounds a little bit, and they'll start talking about and thinking about what this offseason holds, what the future holds. But Spence and I want to break down the game with you. I think it's okay for us to venture slightly down, what lies ahead for this team in the offseason, but we can save that for a later conversation, something maybe for a post locker room clean out and all that. So we'll get to that, but I think it's worth having later in this conversation. But I think, Spence, let's start just with your overall thoughts on the performance tonight. I think obviously Evan Mobley's going to stand out. I think we saw a lot from him really in this entire series that we can get to. And I also just thought in general, like we've kind of been saying throughout the whole thing, not to beat a dead horse, it felt like another game where I wasn't all that impressed with Boston. I get it, like they're missing a key player too in Kristaps Porzingis, but I felt like Cleveland, they put up a valiant effort, even being shorthanded. No Karis LeVert tonight, no Evan Mobley tonight, or not Evan Mobley, no Donovan Mitchell tonight. It's been a long week and a long series. And no Karis LeVert tonight, and they're still able to kind of hang in there. They kept it close to the very end, and I think for that, even in defeat, you at least tip your cap to the Cavaliers for not, just rolling over and saying, Cancun on 3, if you will.
Yeah, no, I think you put it perfectly there, and it's been the story of the season, I think, so far for the Cavs is whenever their back's against the wall, whenever they're missing 3 or 4 guys that are key players, then they're able to step up and be right in the thick of it, right? So that, I think, is something that you take solace in as a Cavs fan. What you obviously can't take solace in is that the season's over after a 5-game series in the second round. That obviously stings a lot. You wonder what could have been if Donovan Mitchell hadn't hurt his calf in that Game 3. You wonder what could have been if Jarrett Allen didn't get hurt in that Orlando series, and maybe the rebounding was a little bit better for the Cavs in this series as well. So there's obviously those questions, and that makes it even more frustrating to evaluate because you see what happens when the guys put it together and they give it their all, and they're close games, and they just were missing shots this entire series, and a lot of guys playing up a position, a lot of guys having their roles changed, and they didn't ever falter. So you give that to them, but you said we're going to get to the offseason eventually, but it's just an unfortunate way for things to end, and at least they left it all out there.
Yeah. I mean, listen, fans aren't going to find, they're not going to take anything. It's not going to be like a positive feeling tonight. I get that. Like, you're not going to sit here and be like, oh, well, at least they tried really hard. Like, I get that. But I do think that it at least deserved mentioning because, listen, like we've seen teams here in Cleveland that when their backs are against the wall, they're not ready. They're not up to that challenge. And I thought tonight, once again, they proved they were up to that challenge, and they gave a really, really good and really, really deep Boston team their best shot, down 3 players that are part of the rotation, 2 more so importantly than the other. But yeah, like I commend them for that on some level. Now, in terms of the specifics of this game, and I think starting with Evan Mobley, Spence, like for as much as we've been somewhat critical of Evan Mobley at times on the offensive end, and I think obviously fans may be even a little more harsher than we've even been in terms of his development there and trying to give him time. And he's only 22, like he still has room to grow, and I'm sure on some level the insertion of Donovan Mitchell kind of out of nowhere a couple years ago had, not stunted his growth, but slowed it down a little bit where he wasn't this focal point who just, hey, let's get this guy to a point and then add the piece. Like, no, he had to kind of start playing backseat and find his role within this team really, really quick, really, really early on in his career. So I think he deserves some time. But I think this series, Spence, gave you a preview or a peek behind the curtain, if you will, of what Evan Mobley can be, like, or what he has a chance to be if he is more of a focal point of the offense. And when he's being aggressive and doing what he did tonight and throughout the series, I mean, this was the best playoff game of his career, obviously, to this point, in the performance that he had. He dropped 33 points, had 7 boards. He was fantastic. I think as you walk away from the season, Cavs fans should feel encouraged by what they saw from Evan Mobley tonight, because that is something that you can now take and say, okay, we can build around that.
Certainly. And what I think was the best for Evan is, one, you said that he had his best playoff game in this facing elimination game 5 on the road against a team that won 64 games. That's building off of a desperation situation in game 2, even too, where he had his best playoff game to that point at that juncture. So that's a good sign, I think, for him and his maturity and his development. They're really utilizing him in the high post. They're really utilizing him coming off of pick and roll situations in the pocket. We know he's really good, but they looked over the top tonight. And I think that Evan did a really good job of stopping short instead of forcing the situation. And he really went over the top with his shot tonight. I think that looked really good. He was going right at Luke Cornett in that third quarter. Man, he was just eating his lunch that entire span that he had that shift. And then he started having confidence to go at guys like Jason Tatum and guys like, Al Horford. And he was really finding his groove, getting the ball. Again, what have I told you this entire time? He's good when he's got momentum going towards the basket. He's not a low block guy. High post, running double screens up top and then slips, whatever it may be. If he's got the ball in motion, that's when he's at his most comfortable and he can control his body. So that's the main part and most comfortable he can get. Now the next is how can he be off the dribble? How can he be at least a threat to shoot a couple of threes a game? How can he get better on the low block in situations? It doesn't have to be his primary go-to move, but how can he be better on the block against guys so that he's not traveling or he doesn't get the chair pulled from him when a defender does that, because Al Horford did that to him in the first half and he had some troubles with that. So it's just about expanding his game. And again, we talk about Evan Mobley's development and as an offensive player, you have to look directly at Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell having the ball so much that he's not really commanding it as a first option, scoring option, right? So that I think has a lot to do with it as well. And, Darius did a great job of setting him up in the pick and roll tonight in the pocket. So you got to give him that. Evan had a couple of cuts, 2 diagonal cuts where Darius was gnashing around and he ended up shoveling it to him. But Evan, I think you can really see his progress from this playoffs. And that's good because what you want to see is incremental growth from somebody who's a core piece and a franchise piece from year to year.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think between both of us, we summed up the Evan Mobley situation pretty well. And that is a silver lining that I think you take away from this postseason, a silver lining that you take away from this series specifically, and something that the Cavaliers can look at and say, okay, we've seen Evan Mobley now on this stage do something. We know we can build around him, whatever that looks like around him, teammate-wise. Again, we'll get to that, and that remains to be seen. But you now have seen on the highest stage, the biggest level, when the lights are the brightest, that he can do it. And I think Cavs fans should be at least encouraged by that. Spence, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't at least mention the fact that, and again, it's another thing that we continue to bring up throughout the series, but just the role players once again tonight. Obviously, you had the Marcus Morris game. It seemed like you were good for one Marcus Morris game in each round.
You got to have at least a 5-minute segment on Marcus Morris.
Yeah, you got a big game out of him against Orlando. You got a big game out of him tonight. He had 25 points, kind of in support of Evan Mobley. And we will get to Darius Garland here in a second too. But the supporting cast around those guys, just 3 points from Dean Wade and some leeway for Dean Wade. I mean, he was inserted in the starting lineup by necessity tonight. But, I mean, the guy was coming back from a knee injury that might still even require surgery this offseason. So we got to cut him some slack there. But just the 3 points tonight. Isaac Okoro, just 5 points tonight. He really hasn't given you much since the first 2 games of the series. Max Strus had 12, but he only shot 30% from the floor. He was 3 of 7 from 3, which is better than he's been in some of the games this round. But just not enough, man. And I like when you think about where the offseason outlook goes from here for Cleveland, I think that's number one. To me, it is the fact that this rotation, the depth around the starters and the pieces that you're trying to kind of insert into specific roles, they either don't fit those roles that you're trying to fit them into, or they're just not good enough. And so it's going to be another offseason around the Donovan Mitchell stuff and everything that's obviously questions about his future. But around that, like, it's another offseason of trying to figure out who needs to stay. You know, are you going to give Isaac Okoro an extension and bring him back here and put him in a certain role that maybe isn't the best for him? Or are you going to go pursue other options to fit those roles that you're looking for? Because it just was not enough in the series, and that was evident against the Boston team that in the opposite, on the other side of this, like, they had all their role players were fitting the roles that they do very, very comfortably well, and they thrived in it.
Yeah, and I think Isaac Okoro's last, few games really kind of let me down a little bit, especially the way he started this series. Defensively, he gives you everything. I know that he's not a guy that should just be sitting in the corner and just taking, spot up threes. That's just not who he is.
Yeah.
And he should be put in better positions, like cutting off of the dribble or cutting from the whatever from the outside and attacking the rim. And obviously we know how dangerous he is in transition, but foul trouble tonight, really tough game, only played 12 minutes because, he was just not giving him much offensively out there and he just didn't have a rhythm. That's something I think that you have to look towards the offseason and reevaluate how much money, you're willing to pay him, how much money other teams are willing to pay him, and you figure that out. Max Strus, I thought, again, we've had this conversation pretty much the whole season. He's giving you good stuff. He's giving you good defense. He's rebounded the ball. When you've needed a playmaker in a pinch, he's been there. He had 9 assists tonight. He did a really good job at that. But he was brought in here to make shots. He was brought in here to make threes. And he just didn't live up to that in a consistent way this offseason or this postseason. So I think in the offseason, you have to also ponder that. You look at George Niang, who was pretty much relegated to a non-role throughout the playoffs and got played out of the rotation.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that you have to look at too, as far as, potential moves that you have to make you can't be played off the floor like that. It's just tough, especially if you're not giving much on the defensive end too, like he was earlier in the season. So those are big questions. Max Strus and George Niang, I think the most. Isaac Okoro, I don't know if he did himself any favors in the postseason.
No.
As far as earning, the contract he's going to get as a restricted free agent this offseason. But that needs to get better. But I'm sure that we're going to get to Darius Garland, and I have a lot to say on Darius Garland after this game.
Well, let's go there next because, listen, like, it's been a roller coaster ride of a season for him. We know that. And I have tried to, I don't even know if tread lightly is the right phrasing, because I don't want to make it sound like, this guy's a multi-million-dollar basketball player. Like, he knows it comes with the territory. He's going to get criticized sometimes. It's part for the course. But there is some context as to, him this season or surrounding him this season. A lot of it revolves around the fact that, he was out for more than a month with his jaw wired shut, eating food through a straw, and lost a bunch of weight. And I'm sure there's a confidence thing there as well. That's almost like a roadblock that maybe wasn't there before that's prevented him from being aggressive at times. And and these, you can say these are all excuses for a guy who's on a max contract. I get it. You're more with it than within your right to be critical of a guy who's making max money. I also would argue, from the Celtics perspective, Spence, like, think about what people were saying about Jaylen Brown last year when the Celtics got bounced when they lost the finals. When they lost to the Heat. It was, the whole conversation was, are you really going to give Jaylen Brown a max contract? Are they really going to do this? He has limitations. He can only attack with his left hand, all this different stuff. And then they gave him the max contract, and he's the highest paid player in the NBA because of it. I just think giving out max contracts is kind of par for the course in the league when you're trying to retain talented players that you think are valuable to your team. So I'm not so harped on the fact that they gave him a max contract. I think they kind of had to do that. And also at that time, he was an all-star. I think there's context as to why he played up and down this year. But the question now is, is this something that's permanent? Like, is he so rattled by everything that's transpired the last 2 years with the facial injuries and all this that he can't get back to being an all-star? Or is there still that player in there? And that's going to be the question the Cavs kind of have to answer. But obviously, a dud of a performance tonight when you needed it the most after he had the great game, obviously, on Monday. And I understand why Cavs fans walk away probably mostly disappointed in Darius Garland for tonight, but also for the season.
Yeah, Jekyll and Hyde for sure. And, I'm glad you bring the context part up. Yeah, he had the facial injuries. He's had to go through a lot personally too. That I don't think gets talked about enough as well.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: these are shots that he's used to making on the pull-ups and stuff like that. Tonight is different. Tonight, he thought he had advantage against Al Horford anytime that he got switched on, and he just got absolutely shut down. And he continually, instead of going to a pull-up against a drop coverage against a guy who was backpedaling, he continually wanted to go into the paint and try to finish around him or finish over him. It did not work. He got blocked twice underneath by Al Horford. Al Horford, to his credit, was able to stay right in front of him. Darius just was not able to find any room against that guy. And it hurt the Cavs. It hurt the Cavs a ton that he was continuously being stubborn and going to the same move and the same game plan every time down the floor. And from there, you've got to change something. You've got to change your shot selection. You've got to change your plan of attack, because as a distributor, he was great. He didn't turn the ball over again. This entire series, he kept taking care of the ball so well. He had some really good passes tonight again, but anytime he looked to score, he was just getting shut down, shut off, whatever it may be. And that just wasn't working. So if it's not working, you have to have it in your mind to say, okay, I got to try something else. If I can't take this guy off the dribble and that's what's happening, swallow your pride, figure out some other way to attack. That's the thing that I think really hung up on me today, is that he just kept trying to do something. The definition of insanity is trying something over and over again and expecting a different result. That's what Darius Garland did tonight. And even if he was half as productive as he was on Monday, the Cavs ended up winning this game. So that's, I think, the most disappointing part about this performance. And obviously there will be a lot of questions going into the offseason with Darius Garland and teams needing a point guard, and obviously the Donovan Mitchell sweepstakes and whether or not he signs an extension with the Cavs or whether the Cavs deal him. So that's what's really hard to put a finger on what they're going to do, because it kind of all revolves around what Donovan Mitchell does. But in this game, particularly for Darius Garland, and in the postseason, as far as inconsistencies go, it was really disappointing.
That's a really astute observation by you on the way he was being played and his ability to kind of take advantage of it. I almost wonder if it was just like him trying to convince himself something like, this is how I got to get the.
He was being aggressive.
Yeah.
Okay. Like people are like, oh, he's shying away from. He's not shying away from the moment.
Yeah.
He's just he's going about it the wrong way.
And that's maybe to my point. Like, I wonder if that's maybe what it was. Like, he was like, well, I got to stay aggressive. I got to keep doing it this way. And it was almost like a stubborn thing at that point. He just did never pivot to a different strategy. And I think you're spot on with some of that analysis here. You mentioned questions that loom this offseason, Donovan Mitchell being at the forefront of that. Where do you think the Cavs go from here? And again, this can be more surface level. We don't have to get into all the minutia of it all. We'll have plenty of time to talk about those things in the weeks ahead, the months ahead, whatever. But where do you kind of envision the Cavs go from here? What do you think they need to do to go from here?
I think you have to take a real hard look at, you've not been able to get a sizable wing for the playoffs or on this roster for a number of years now. You have to. I have names that come to mind in my head. I don't know trade packages or whatever, but you need someone like a Dorian Finney-Smith. You need someone, if you want to aim higher, you can look at someone like a DeAndre Hunter. There's a lot of people thinking that Darius Garland could be a fit in San Antonio. And immediately come to mind for me is a guy like Devin Vassell or Keldon Johnson. Yeah. These are just names. I'm not speculating or anything like that. I'm just thinking.
It's in stone now, Spence. It's got to happen.
The player archetype that you're looking for is someone like that. Cam Johnson, another one. Mikal Bridges. Wings like that make sense as far as who you want to surround these guys with. And again, I think roster construction-wise, you have to look at something, whether – I don't know. Maybe it does have to come down to Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland. Maybe it does have to come down to Evan Mobley or Jared Allen, because Jared Allen and Darius Garland are the only trade value that they really have.
Yeah.
That's another one that's going to be tough. And I don't envy Kobe Altman for this position.
No. Yeah, you're right. I think you mentioned the two kind of pairings there. I think this postseason has just brightened the spotlight on the fact that there's some redundancies here. You have two ball dominant guards that play together, and listen, it seems from all accounts Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell really like each other. I don't know if it's going to fit long term, though, in terms of trying to win a championship. I also think there's some redundancies with Mobley and Allen. If Mobley isn't going to develop into a true like stretch four style player that's taking a bunch of threes a game, can those two play together? And I think we saw some of that because JB Bickerstaff was staggering them at times throughout the season and wasn't playing them just outright together all the time like he did in previous seasons. So I think that's kind of an interesting nugget as well. So where do they go from here? And you mentioned like those are two of the bigger trade assets that they have if they were to split them up would be, either one of Garland or Mitchell or one of Allen or Mobley, but I don't think Mobley's obviously going to get traded in any capacity. They value him too much as a cornerstone piece of this team, and he's somebody they still have many years of control over, so that makes sense. And we all know, like, this summer is going to begin and it's going to end with whatever Donovan Mitchell decides. I just want to say this. Neither Spencer or I are in Donovan Mitchell's head. We can't say one way or another what he's going to do. Neither of us know. We can read tea leaves. We can pick up on certain things. I'll say this, though, man. Like, if we saw his last game in a Cavaliers uniform a couple games ago, I was watching him intently the last two games, come out to like mid-court to high-five his teammates, pick them up, coach them up on the sideline, coach them up on the court. He was pointing, he was directing, he was doing what he does out on the court from the bench. Like, Spence, some of those years when LeBron was here, like the first time he left, right, there was the image of him like taking the jersey off as he's going to the – we know what it looks like when a guy has 1 foot out the door already. And maybe it's just Donovan Mitchell playing poker, and he's not trying to give anything away. But he seems like such a genuine person that I don't think that's what it is. I think he truly has just been focused on the moment, truly just been focused on trying to win with the group that he has. And I think he does really like this group of guys, and he wants to have success here. If I had to guess today, listen, where there's smoke, there's fire. So all these people saying that, teams are ready with their packages and all that, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people interested, and I'm sure Mitchell's going to at least survey, what's out there. But if I had to say today, I guess I would say I think I could see him signing the extension just because it makes more sense for him financially anyway, and at least gives the Cavs one more year to try to figure this thing out before he then maybe forces the issue of, okay, I'm going somewhere else. That's just my gut check. This isn't me reporting anything. This is just my gut feeling on it. But like just the way he seemed bought into everything, the way he interacted with his teammates all year, the way he interacted even when he wasn't on the floor, that didn't seem like a guy who's just like ready to, spur in the organization and he's completely unhappy and, yeah, I'm out of here anyway, so who cares? So I just want to throw that out there because I thought that was notable from the last couple of games.
Yeah, and I think all season long you've seen the dedication to the team. You've seen him, even when the cameras aren't on, he's given pointers to guys like Isaac Okoro, whose locker room is right next to him, right? Talking up to guys like Evan Mobley and just always going to bat for Jarrett Allen. Like, he was really all in this year. And he's been all in since he's been here. And maybe he's going about his business differently than someone who would have 1 foot out the door and us not know it. But I mean, for the way that he's handled this, the way he's handled the trade since being here and the way that he's interacted with his teammates and shown leadership and been the most mentally strong guy on this team, in my opinion, I think that speaks volumes to who he is as a person, who he is as a competitor. And that, I think, can't go unnoticed because that's what you need, that you need a leader like that. And that's what a superstar is. That's what a superstar does. So, I don't know what he's going to do. You said teams are lining up their offers. Yeah, they're lining up their offers, but we can see how many times Kobe Altman picks up the phone and says, for some of these packages that are being put together by the NBA trade machine, because a lot of it you're just not going to get what you want back for Donovan Mitchell. So maybe even if he doesn't sign the extension, they're like, you know what, is it really worth it? Is it really worth to strip everything down? Like, I might ride this out because what you have in Donovan Mitchell, and you take a little bit of the load off of him. Maybe there's a coaching change. I know that there's a lot of smoke and fire with that too, as we've spoken about. So we'll see where it goes. But nothing but good things to say about Donovan Mitchell and the way that he's really taken this organization and to being one of his own.
Very well said. I hope that Kobe Altman says haha just like that when he picks up the phone. And
did you see some of these the Laker package is hilarious. The Nets package that people were proposing is hilarious. It's just not.
I'll say this for Cavs fans. All these people that have been reporting that Donovan Mitchell is going to be leaving, like I've been keeping the receipts. Not even out of spite, just to see like all these national people who are like, oh, he's leaving. Like, was he really ever leaving, or were you just trying to force the issue because you didn't want a superstar player like that in Cleveland? We'll see. We'll see how it all shakes out. But to your point on the coaching thing, like, yeah, I think we're all kind of bracing for that potentially coming down here. I mean, who knows? As soon as maybe tomorrow morning, for all we know. But and we'll obviously react to that as or if it happens. Spence, like we've been doing, let's get out of here one last time with something you were just encouraged by and something that you were discouraged by. One last round for the playoffs here on our post-game reaction.
Encouraged by. This is just looking at it as a whole. They got to the second round, and I had multiple people text me from Boston beat writers talking about how much the Cavs actually gave in that series. I think you have to give it to them just from a competitive standpoint. They really took it to them. They did a good job defensively for the most part. They just were not able to keep up with the scoring. So just the effort in general is something that I'm encouraged by. But again, I mean, this isn't a participation trophy league. This is something where it's a matter of fact.
It's a season tournament, I guess. But yeah.
Right. I'm saying, but I mean, and that's one thing you got to give to JB Bickerstaff too. If he isn't around after this, you have to at least credit and acknowledge how when they had no guys or they were down multiple bodies, that's when the Cavs were at their best. Yeah. What you have to be discouraged by in that situation is when you're at full strength, making all the pieces work, finding the correct rotations, finding the correct combinations, and just not putting guys in position to be successful all around. So that's one thing that really I think will be the downfall of him and in his stubbornness and rotations as well at times. But again, I don't think a lot of it. I don't think all of this should fall on JB, as do a lot of fans. Like I think it's a little bit of everything. I think some roster construction issues are obvious here. I think there's obviously some coaching stuff going around, and I think a lot of the players have to play better and execute better, including Darius Garland, including Evan Mobley, who showed he was capable of it. So that's again something that you're encouraged by. But a lot of these guys, it ended up having to be make your shots. And that's a perfect way to end it for me, because that was literally the theme of the entire postseason.
It was. Well, and in that vein, the thing I'm most discouraged by, as you mentioned, it's not all on JB, I think is kind of this idea of the roster construction as a whole. And most notably, Spence, like the two guys, your two key acquisitions this offseason gave you, I don't want to say nothing, because Strus was out there working his ass off whenever he could. But again, you said it. They brought him in to make shots. And the Cavs had to know what they were getting in that signing, and it reared its ugly head in this postseason. Like, yeah, the effort was there, but the shots weren't always falling, and this time of year you need that. So for those two guys to be as disappointing as they were this time of year, I think is a little frustrating, because those are your two big acquisitions that were supposed to be like the keys to unlocking more with this team, and it wasn't there. So I think I'm most discouraged by that, and that'll certainly trigger some conversations that revolve around what's going to play out this offseason. And then encouraged by, I think the answer has to be Evan Mobley. I think what he showed us in this postseason, in this last series against Boston, is something to clearly build off of, and it's going to be sort of the vision for this team moving forward of like, okay, this is some of the stuff we have to do with him on this team moving forward to have the best success that we can and get the most out of him. And there's something there. So you can kind of leave with that positive image of, okay, Evan Mobley can do it, and he's a player that we can build around for the future, which is obviously a good thing. All right, guys, it's
bonus discouragement.
Sure.
They got 2 games out of Ty Jerome.
Yeah.
He played the Dylan Windler role admirably this season.
Not great. Yeah, you wanted to see more there for sure. I get that. No, No Amani Bates either. I'm sure people were upset about that because when he was drafted, they thought he was like the second coming of, I don't know, Jesus Shuttleworth. Anyway, no, guys, longer episode than usual, but I think it was warranted given it was the end of the season, the end of the Cavs postseason run. We don't have words yet on locker clean out day and all that, but when we get it, we'll certainly be sure to connect with you guys and keep in the loop on we'll have a conversation, I'm sure, after that as well. We'll get quotes from guys and what was kind of said after the fact. So we'll keep you up to date on that and look forward to having that conversation. And I hope Spence and I get a chance to have more of these conversations with you throughout the offseason as certain decisions play out and certain maneuvers are made, and we'll be here to cover it for you right here at the Cavs Insider YouTube page and, of course, over at si.com/NBA/Cavaliers. Spence, it's been fun, man. I hope we have plenty of more of this to come. And as always, we appreciate you guys watching. Until next time, take it easy, and we hope to talk to you guys again soon.